Alright folks, we're talking about the top 7 gods of death. These are the guys who clock in every day, just to make sure you clock out. So, buckle the fuck up. It's gonna get dark, weird, and a bit hilarious. Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal is the Sumerian goddess of death. She's got a personality darker than a black hole's asshole. She is the sister of Inanna, the goddess of love. The bonding between these two was about as messed up as a cactus dildo. One day, Inanna, wanting to expand her power, decides to drop in on Kur, the domain of Ereshkigal. But to enter Kur, Inanna's got to pass through 7 gates guarded by a gatekeeper. So, she did what any self-respecting goddess of love would do: flash the boobs. She strip-teases the hell out of the gatekeeper by stripping a piece of clothing at each gate until she arrives butt-naked before Ereshkigal. Now, what does Ereshkigal do? Oh, she just kills Inanna and hangs her body on a hook. With Inanna gone, everyone in the mortal realm was left wondering why their Tinder matches were ghosting them. So, Enki, the god who created mortals, decides to step in to sort this shit out. He manages to appease Ereshkigal and revive Inanna. But there is a catch. Someone else gotta take her place in the underworld. So, what does Inanna do? Oh, she just throws her husband into the underworld. Anubis. Anubis is the Egyptian god of death. He has the head of a jackal and the body of a man. It's like ancient Egyptians just couldn't decide if they wanted a god or a guard dog, so they just mashed them together and called it a day. But hey, at least Anubis doesn't have to worry about bad hair days. He's already got that whole "I woke up like this" vibe, perfectly suited for scaring off grave robbers. You gotta wonder, though, does he ever get tired of being mistaken for someone's pet? No, Karen, I'm not here to fetch. I'm here to judge your soul. Anubis gives your heart a test. He weighs it against a feather on a scale. If your heart tips the scale, congrats, you're screwed. Anubis will toss your impure soul into oblivion, like yesterday's garbage. But if your heart's as light as a feather, Anubis will guide you into the afterlife, probably with a smirk, knowing you barely made the cut. Hel. Hel is the Norse goddess of death. She's the daughter of Loki, the god of mischief. Her siblings are Fenrir, the giant wolf with a serious anger management issue, and Jormungandr, the world serpent with an attitude. Thanks to a prophecy that these kids were bad news and would eventually cause some serious end-of-the-world level havoc, Odin decides to deal with them before they hit puberty. Fenrir gets tied up to a rock with a magic ribbon. Jormungandr gets tossed into the ocean like an unwanted goldfish, and Hel gets sent to the underworld like some goth teenager grounded for eternity. In her underworld domain, Hel was in charge of all the folks who died from natural causes. Basically, if you die of old age or get taken out by the common cold, Hel is your gal. Meanwhile, all the warriors who go out in a badass Viking battle will party it up in Valhalla or Folkvanger. During Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world, it is foretold that Hel will release her army of the dead to join the forces of Loki in the final battle against the gods. Picture a zombie apocalypse but on steroids. Yama. Yama is the Hindu god of death. He is the king of Naraka, the underworld. Yama will judge the deeds of the souls like a strict principal and assign them to either Naraka or Swarga. In case you're sitting on a 50-50 mix of good and bad, congratulations! You are born again for another lifetime of bills, drama, and trying to remember your passwords. And what's worse, you might not even remember what you did wrong the last time around. Now, there was this princess named Savithri, who was married to a guy named Sathyawan. The poor dude was doomed to die within a year thanks to a curse. When Yama rolls up to collect Sathyawan's soul, Savithri isn't having it. She starts nagging Yama to take a rain check on her husband's soul. As Yama drags Sathyawan's soul along, Savithri follows him like a determined road trip buddy who just won't take a hint. Yama tries everything to shake her off: shortcuts, pit stops, even ghost stories. But Savitri's got the persistence of a telemark eater with a quota. Eventually, Yama's impressed by her sheer tenacity and offers her a boon, with the one condition that she can't ask for her husband's life back. Savithri, being the smart cookie she is, asks for 100 sons with Sathyawan. Bam! She's created a paradox where Yama has to bring Sathyawan back to fulfill her wish. So he gives Sathyawan his life back, probably thinking, this woman should be running the world. Thanatos. Thanatos is the Greek god of death. Unlike Hades, who's the big boss of the underworld, Thanatos is more like the guy who shows up to remind you that your time's up. Now, there was this king named Sisyphus, and he was a real piece of shit. He was cunning, deceitful, and just a general pain in the gods' immortal asses. The gods had finally had enough of his nonsense, so Zeus sent Thanatos to collect his soul. Thanatos shows up with chains, ready to do his Grim Reaper thing. But Sisyphus, being the slick bastard he was, pulled a fast one. He acted all curious, like, "Hey, buddy, mind showing me how those chains work?" Thanatos, clearly not the brightest crayon in the box, starts demonstrating. And bam! Sisyphus flips the script and shackles Thanatos instead. With the god of death out of commission, nobody could die anymore. The world goes batshit crazy. Ares, the god of war, was losing his shit because his battles had turned into slap fights with no fatalities. Fed up with all the BS, Ares busts Thanatos out of his chains, putting death back on the menu. As for Sisyphus, the god sentenced him to an eternal routine. He was tasked with rolling a massive boulder up a steep hill. However, every time he almost made it to the top, the damn thing rolled back down, and he had to start over, forever. Izanami. Izanami is the Japanese goddess of death. Before she got into this whole death business, Izanami was actually a goddess of creation. Along with her husband, Izanagi, she was given the ultimate DIY project of creating the land. They start by whipping up an island called Onigoro, where they decide to set up shop and start pumping out more islands of Japan. Everything was going great. They even had some divine kids. First came the sun goddess, Amaterasu, then the moon god, Tsukuyomi, and finally the storm god, Susanoo. But when it came time to deliver their final kid, the fire god, Kagutsuchi, things went south. Izanami literally got burned out during childbirth, and the poor goddess ended up dead. Talk about a rough delivery. Izanagi, being the clingy husband, refuses to let her go and decides to take a trip to Yomi, the creepy underworld, to get her back. But Izanami had already chowed down on the food of the dead, meaning she was stuck there for good. She was also like, "Babe, please don't look at me. Things have gotten gross." But the dude ignores her warning and lights a fire to see her. There she was, all decayed and maggoty, not exactly the goddess of his dreams anymore. Freaked out, Izanagi noped out of Yomi like his pants were on fire. To keep Izanami from following him to the world of the living, he blocked the entrance with a boulder, basically putting a no-entry sign on the gates of the underworld. Now, pissed off and stuck as the goddess of death, Izanami wasn't about to let her man off easy. She declared she'd take 1,000 lives every day as payback for his betrayal. Izanagi, not one to be outdone, was like, "Fine, I'll make sure 1,500 people are born each day, keeping the cycle of life and death going." Ankou. Ankou isn't exactly a god. He's more like death's right-hand man, the OG Grim Reaper in Breton mythology. Ankou's got the whole creepy skeleton in a black robe vibe down to a science, and a massive hat that hides his face like he's too cool to show up on Instagram. Oh, and let's not forget the horse cart he rides around in to scoop up souls. It's the ultimate gothmobile, giving off serious, "I'm here to harvest your soul, and I'm not stopping for snacks" energy. One legend has it that Ankou was actually the first kid of Adam and Eve, but other versions of the story mix it up a bit. In one, he's the first dude to kick the bucket each year, and he's stuck with the grim task of rounding up other souls before he can finally clock out with some other dude who dies first the next year. Then there's the version where Ankou was a total douchebag prince who decided to challenge death to a hunting contest. The game? Who could kill a black stag first? Spoiler alert, death wins because, duh, it's death. The prince ends up cursed to roam the earth as a ghoul forever, dragging his scythe and his regrets behind him.